This is Casual Babble.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Casual Babble. I'm your host, BC Babbles, and this is the podcast where typically we explore the conversations, stories, and strategies that shape creative entrepreneurship. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different though, because I'm officially introducing a new concept for the show that I believe will really kind of revamp how we approach conversations. The concept is the creative loop. It came upon by a kind of revelation recently when I was considering how to best really narrow down the audience. I think that the delve into the culture of the unprofessional and entrepreneur is a solid starting point, but it's still a pretty broad starting point. But I think this idea of the creative loop is simple sounding, but it's pretty powerful. Hear me out. Creativity fuels entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship shapes culture, and culture sparks the next wave of creativity. It's a cycle that I've seen us all be part of, whether you're a freelancer, a startup founder, or just somebody chasing a dream. So in today's episode, we're going to break down what this cycle looks like, talk about why it matters, and share how I see this framework guiding our conversations moving forward. So hop on in with me, okay? So why the change, right? Well, like I said, I've been doing a lot of contemplation about what the show's done since 2022 when it was officially relaunched. It had its initial launch top of 2020, not the best timing for an interview and ideally in-person based podcast, but it was revamped in 2022 and it was pretty strong for a while, tapered off here and there with some sabbaticals. And of course, we just hopped back on from a pretty long sabbatical since early 2024. And for me, as someone who came from radio and who to a degree, kind of wishes they had that chance in radio, but loves podcasting and loves having this conversational space that I get to cultivate with you and give us a space to connect and really discuss topics I believe are really important for those of us who are innovated in creating new experiences. And so ideally, dream career, I'm doing this as my job. This is my career eventually. Building the show into a solid business where I can find other creative ways to engage with you. And that all starts with really making sure we've got a solid foundation. And so I was contemplating whether or not the audience had the proper focus, or per se, I was giving the audience the proper focus. And I, with a very extensive conversation with ChatGPT, I'll not lie, I came to the realization that while the initial, approach of the dive into the culture of the unprofessional is a solid approach, it's still a pretty broad umbrella. So there's still room for niching and really narrowing down where I think I can find the right approach for you to really get you hooked to start building that loyal community that I've always dreamed of being able to build. So, this is why I think it works partially, and we've always been about creative conversations. It's always been about showcasing one entrepreneur or another, getting their unique story, and ideally providing you actionable insights that you can, take into your own creative venture. Over time, you've definitely noticed themes, ideas, businesses, culture. I'd almost challenge you to find an episode where all three of those topics were not at least 2 or 3 times involved in the conversation. But the point of this cycle is to provide the show with a more signature lens. I want to make each episode richer and more intentional because I feel like we've been kind of free diving a lot, which is fun in the beginning, but we kind of, to a degree, I feel always lacked, despite the guests I may have had on the episode, we lacked a goal per se. I know giving you insights is a goal to a degree, but I feel like there's something more actionable I could aim for. So that's another reason why I believe this cycle and making it part of the format will really be helpful as we move forward. Moving to the first part, where creativity feeds entrepreneurship. Big surprise, every business starts with an idea, a creative spark. That's one of the reasons we use words like entrepreneur, innovator. We establish ourselves as somebody who endeavors to find a way to establish something new within either a pre-existing industry or in some way, shape, or form create a whole new industry that the world didn't realize it needed or wanted. For example, a designer turning side projects into a band, a podcaster into a media company, dream career, me. And part of what makes innovation is that the creativity isn't just an idea. It's not just an art. It's problem solving. It's storytelling. It's seeing possibilities in spots where other people haven't looked yet or haven't known how to properly investigate. So a question I would ask you here is, what creative idea in your life would spark a business if given the structure? For me, what inspired me to create Casual Babble is noticing that in college, teachers are really good at helping students understand what expectations there will be of them, how many hats one person will likely be expected to wear in any singular given role. Especially for my classmates, we were all communications majors, we're all going into similar avenues of work. But what I kind of found was often lacking for those who have not been here since the original episodes, is that there was a big lack of conversation on what can actually happen in the office once you have that job. It's not all within this prescribed collegiate mental template. A lot of things can go left. A lot of interesting things occur. And that's kind of what gave the spark to the idea of Casual Babble. How do we discuss what we actually experience on a day-to-day basis as new professionals in the workspace? Because lots of things happen. And I've shared a lot of very interesting stories on this show over the past, 5-6 years now, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, and that's why Casual Babble is a thing. Clearly, and if you've been here for a while, you yourself have noticed the change in the topics. I still have a little bit of, water cooler gossip every now and then. I think it makes conversations very interesting. Even though it has resulted in me losing a job in the past, it's whatever. But it's part of the experience. And again, that's, where this came from. And again, I would love to build this into a media career. But now let's move into the second part, how entrepreneurship feeds culture. Businesses don't just sell products or services. They're all about shaping habits, communities, industries. Like I said, a lot of those ideas are somebody finding a new space to investigate and develop new ways to solve long-standing problems and provide new solutions. And those revelations, those ingenuities, those innovations, they reshape the previously settled structure of any given industry, if not create a whole new industry that, again, the world didn't realize it needed, right? Think about companies like Apple, how they shaped design culture, or how Etsy reshaped handmade economies, right? Those staples in those areas have really established themselves as thought leaders on how those industries can be approached. Local indie businesses also define local culture. Coffee shops, co-working spaces, community events, my bread and butter, right? One of my favorite spots is this local space just down the road called Defined Coffee. And that's if I don't want to drive all the way down to Charlotte. And if I do drive down to Charlotte, it's usually going to be at Not Just Coffee off of J Street, just west of Uptown. you know, and entrepreneurs often become cultural leaders unintentionally or intentionally. It's part of the gig. We step in to make something new, and as a result, we affect a lot more than what we likely intend to. For good or for bad is kind of, the jury's out on that, but it still happens, right? Moving into the third part, culture feeds creativity. Culture provides the canvas for the next wave of creativity. If you think of yourself as a brand new prospective entrepreneur, right? Typically, you are what I call traditionally employed. You have a 9 to 5 of sorts, and you have the desire to do something that's paved in your own way, right? So what do? You find ways and days and times to attend a pitching event or go to some kind of networking social after your typical work hours. And when you enter those spaces, they're brimming with the current culture already set by those entrepreneurs who've built businesses that have been shaping the culture. So that previous generation has intentionally or unintentionally created an atmosphere that you walk into. And as you're exposing yourself to that world for the first time, that becomes your understanding of that culture. And therefore, that culture, its aspects, its values, its facets help shape how you want to approach your own entrepreneurial ego or incentive. And then the cycle starts all over again. That culture inspires you to take an idea that you have, give it a business format, then you become an entrepreneur, you build your business, you focus on creating at least an internal culture as you build a team and your business grows and scales, but ultimately that business then goes back out into the collective and in some way, shape, or form shapes or reshapes that culture that the next new creative will see and be influenced by. It's this constant Ouroboros of a culture, really. For those Wheel of Time fans, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills kind of thing. And once a community or industry sets new norms, creatives use those norms as inspirations or challenges. Like I said, for example, hip hop culture influenced fashion and entrepreneurship, or startup hustle culture, losing my words here, inspired creators to redefine a work-life balance. And now we have this thing called gig culture, or this phenomena where most employees these days don't treat their full-time jobs as like, this is my career. They treat it more as like, this is my now. This is my, so long as I see it suiting me kind of thing, which is a very new phenomena that a lot of long-time established businesses don't know how to make sense of, which makes sense to a degree, but that is the result of entrepreneurship and how it affects culture. So another question for you here is, what part of your current culture, social, digital, local, is sparking your creativity right now? What is constantly re-entering your vision, your perspective, and prompting you to consider, hey, maybe I should try this out. Maybe I should go out and step out into the world and give this idea shape and form, give it a structure, a model, whether or not you do it part-time and don't tell your boss, or you take the crazy leap and become a entrepreneur full-time. I did that partially because I didn't have a choice, but I still chose to make that move. And it was scary, but it's also an experience I would never replace for anything because I got to do so many awesome things. So let's take these 3 ideas. Creativity influences entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship feeds culture, and culture feeds creativity, and bring it together. So again, future episodes, we will still have guests. They will still share their journey. They will still talk about important pivotal moments in their past that helped them initiate or find the gumption to really move forward steadfast into their innovative ventures and strides. But I'm going to challenge them to consider how they feed into this cycle. They do. They all do. We all do. It's just a matter of whether or not you are aware of how you do it. So that'll be a lot of fun, I think. And this also creates a conversation that's more, than just business advice, which is something I've always wanted you to have when you leave an episode of Casual Babble. Actionable advice, actionable insights that help you figure out your first or next step. But I also now want to make sure I provide you impact. I want to provide you sustainability. And hell, I want to build a legacy for this show. I want to build it into something meaningful that really helps you thrive in whatever innovative, entrepreneurial, trailblazing fashion you want to seek out for yourself. Because I think we all deserve that solid chance. And if I can be somebody who provides you those tools, those resources through conversations, through landscape news, through the ecosystem's updates, then I want to be that voice for you. That's the point. So that's the creative loop, the new heartbeat of Casual Babble. Every conversation we have from here on out is going to trace this cycle, because that's where the real magic happens. Ideas become businesses, businesses shape culture, and culture inspires the next ideas. It's not a straight line, it's a loop that we're all part of. If this resonates with you, share the episode with a fellow creative or entrepreneur. And if you want to be part of the shaping of the future of the show, drop your thoughts in the comments and reach out directly. And if you're on Podmatch, that's also another avenue through which I am meeting most of my guests. So directly or through Podmatch. I will say, if you're someone who wants to be a guest on a lot of shows, or who has your own show and you want a lot of guests, Podmatch is the way to go. So check out my Linktree /Casual Babble. It'll have my link for Podmatch in there, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And again, if you're listening on YouTube, please follow, please like. It really helps out the show, the channel. It helps, provide more assistance in keeping the show going. If you're listening on your favorite streaming platform, give us a follow there too. We greatly appreciate the help. So thanks for being here, and let's keep the loop spinning.